Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming for the last session of the day. I see some of you actually have already glasses and are preparing for the evening. And also, welcome to anyone who is also watching online. My name is Miha, and you will see Blake later also on the stage. We're kind of tossing the coin, and I won. You will listen to my East European accent for most of the hour. And after that, Blake will bring a couple of his colleagues and customers to actually talk about the practical cases. We are both coming from professional services in Amazon Web Services. And for last nearly 2 years, we have a double mission. We do help very large enterprises on their adoption journeys and actually trying to help them to find both right strategies and right tactical approaches. But even more important is that our mission is actually to find and capture and bottle all of those patterns and knowledge that we find in our deployments and try to consume and package that and give back to others. So again, thanks for being here. I think I have a treat for you just as a reward that you actually survived for the rest of the day and came to this room. You will get a very early exposure to one of the white papers we are literally releasing today, and you will see the link at the end of the session, as long as you stay on a chair and as long as you rate this session as an absolutely awesome at the end. So, what am I talking here today? Probably the easiest way, if you decide, are you staying or rather going drinking, it's kind of how enterprise architecture actually meets the cloud. I'm an enterprise architect for nearly 20 years, and I mean enterprise architect in that old-fashioned capital E, capital A. But what we were doing in IT transformation practice that I'm part of, and Blake is also part of, we actually created a very structured set of methods and approaches that help very large enterprises to create their own individualized, well-defined roadmap on the adoption to the cloud. I'll show you the white paper at the end that you can get much more information, but this is kind of almost, I wouldn't say the early exposure into it, but definitely we have a long way to go from the descriptive framework that we are releasing today down to prescriptive methodology and further down into offering you, I hope very soon, a set of tools, intellectual property, and templates and everything that actually can help you to create the journey to the cloud as efficient and effective as possible. Right, so let me first start with a story that you understand where we are coming from. And we were quite surprised when we started to build a very strong strategic relations with large customers that the questions that we heard, we actually couldn't just go, well, we have EC2 and we have S3, and can you do something with it? Because the questions were coming very much from a high end of a strategic question, a strategic part of the life cycle. And we needed to create a very, very cautious approach. How do we actually answer the questions which are usually addressed in a reasoning and a business case behind? So the questions like, why am I going to the cloud? What is going to be a benefit for me? And all of those questions that you probably heard or are going through on your own, or maybe you went through it on your own, we had the absolute need to create a set of models, or actually adopt models. This is a Norton Kaplan strategy map. That is one of the models that we are using to help customers to first clarify what does that IT in a large enterprise actually want to achieve as a strategic objective, and then, of course, as a corollary, how does cloud help with that? So you can see a couple of obvious things. For example, how can cloud help you manage the cost of IT, and how does the cost reduction happen there? Also, if you go further down the stack and you're looking into how does a typical IT organization serve your own internal customers, which are actually business units. So can you demonstrate competitive cost of your own IT environment that business units won't go and just swipe a credit card straight with some external SaaS or IaaS provider out there? Also, if you're looking at the bottom, we found out a couple of very interesting trends that if you use cloud computing, or specifically Amazon Web Services, actually becomes a great attractor for new talent. And that you can actually first promote the culture of innovation, you can attract talent that you actually want from the street, and create the new type of the workforce that most of the IT organizations are striving for, but are also having a struggle to actually create. That was one part and one model, and we kind of created a really well set of processes and packaged it together, put it on a site. And then we came to another problem, which was when a customer asked us, so where actually is a true value and value realization from a cloud? And we were forced to start going back and going, okay, this is another set of business questions. Fine, let us package. What does value really mean? And after a lot of thinking, discussions with a couple of customers, we came to a typical, you'll see on a tactical side, we have a very, very normalized approach. But the strategic one is much more interesting. Tactically, we follow the trend which we see in a typical value engineering or value management discipline. Value is benefits minus detriments. And then we went down that path and we're going, okay, how do we define and measure detriments? What can you get from the cloud that kind of lowers the detriments for you? How can we lower the cost for you and actually put a quantified number on it? How can we lower the risk for you? And we went down to the risk IT, which is in COBIT, controlled objectives in IT, and created a very specific model in there. We also went up the stack there. Literally, you can see that we are walking up the value realization from relatively low amount of value from the cloud, super important, but low incremental amount of value towards increasing agility, increasing speed. And then we had a whole bunch of customers that asked for the value type of a discussion, much more on strategic sides. How can we turn IT to become a highly agile, innovative type of a IT as a service? That we allow little venture capital experimentation. How can I actually play with budgets differently? And can cloud help me with that? That I can rapidly spin up a new experiment and pull it back. And also, that's actually where we would like that all of you are, all of us are, how can you actually create new business models that will help you accelerate on that journey? So this was another model we packaged, and you see that kind of we looked at all of that, and at the end we decided, well, we need to have a whole set of components that obviously they all fit into a business perspective. And we looked what else is required there, and very much created an ecosystem of a whole bunch of components that we are saying, well, if we see that a customer needs that, we'll pull it out. We have a bunch of activities behind, and we kind of know descriptively what's required in there. It was much more important for us to try to actually create well-defined perspective for a business audience that we can provide the answers whenever something from an IT strategy, from value realization, and from all of the other business alignment perspective are coming from. Now let me walk you to the other opposite side, which is our typical strengths, the technology part, where we in AWS, we always proud ourselves, we are actually extremely technical. All of our consultants are technical, all of our solution architects, probably everyone that you interact with us at this conference is deeply technical. Until actually customer comes and says, well, we are thinking about that high order business capability or IT capability, and we would like AWS help with it. Well, the problem is that abilities of IT to provide business value are not exactly what we sell. We are selling actually measured elastic IT resources. And that gap in between is just a little bit too wide that if you have, for example, predictive analytics as your IT capability request, we can just go, well, we have EMR and Dynamo and EC2 to serve it. So we created a bunch of intermediate steps that we actually grab the IT capability, we decompose it into workloads. Every workload becomes a stack of different things, and we decompose the stack into a very well-defined managed templates. And we created a bunch of those trees, particularly on a conceptual level. So if I try to answer what we did here, we created a conceptual architecture for cloud computing capabilities and used it on a couple of projects, and actually it's gaining traction, particularly with very large enterprise teams. Now, when it comes to application migrations, one of the dispositions that we often do in application migration is actually doing the refactoring of the app. We take the cloud capabilities and we look at the app that is running on premises and we try to refactor it and actually grab the best of the best. The problem is that our amount of our cloud services that we offer are now so complex that we need another tool, another kind of a tool in that technical toolbox that will help us to compose things together. So we literally went, and you're only seeing level 1 and level 2 here. I'm not going into deeper decomposition just because of time and because of already letters are quite small on this slide. This is what we came out with as a canvas for enterprise architect, for logical architecture. You want to see a solution on this stack? Once you start to look into it and you're going, well, how does a typical website look in that modeling canvas? Well, browser actually uses HTTP protocol and goes all the way down to the Tomcat, obviously running on Java, sits on top of some BSD Linux, goes into the compute optimized, and at the bottom is elastic, and it is using name resolution. You also see that obviously that the Java instance is using also managed relational database, and you don't need to care what that relational database sits on. That's why blue color. So you don't need to actually decompose it further down into the primitives underneath the database. But also, some of the static images and stuff sits on an object store, and it is sitting on content delivery. I didn't name a single Amazon service, but you already see that you could actually very easily compose an app. You want a mobile app? Fine. We'll make a different pattern on top of it. And we went down many different compositions of many different patterns. And although we are refining the model, and with all the announcements, we are adding additional IT capabilities on this canvas, you can see how easy it is being an architect and actually start composing that amount of different web services that we offer, that you actually can create something that is using maximum benefits of various cloud services. So we went further down, and I will not bother with all of the other detailed technical components that we had, but we kind of created another perspective. You saw the business perspective before for a business audience. Now you can see that we have a platform perspective, which is mostly targeting solution architects and IT engineering. And in there, we went down, again, the road of how exactly the production happens and what really we do when we compose things and we go down the new engagements. And we created a whole bunch of components, put them together next to the business components, and we're going, OK, our box of enterprise architecture Lego bricks is growing. Let me continue down the same path here. The next one that we came to actually hit directly in the discussion with enterprise architects. Enterprise architects are always concerned about very much three things: current state, future state, and gap analysis. And then on top of that, you add also a little bit of a heat mapping and a road mapping, and very much you defined what enterprise architects do in a large enterprise. So how about that future state? How do you define the future state? What is that future journey? And our first iterations were, well, let's create something like a capability maturity map. You'll be at the stage 1, and then you'll go to stage 2, and 3, and 4. You know that. We are doing that for 25 years, and kind of found it extremely limiting, because you can only be in one state, and there are only 4 or 5, and there's only one way out from that state. And our customers don't work that way. Every customer was quite unique. So this is one of the models that we are using at the moment, and again, we are refining it. We actually created a state machine. And we're going, well, your journey between the states can be very, very different depending on your needs. You can see an example here going from traditional enterprise to a cost-focused enterprise, going up to innovative enterprise into a growth-obsessed enterprise. And we can say, well, that is a 2, 3, 4-year journey, and we kind of know what to do there. Well, let me be very clear. Don't look at the states of the state machine. Look at the transitions of the state machine, because transitions matter. Once you're in the state, if you have no need to move, I have no need to talk to you, or our partners have no need to talk to you. So transitions matter. For every transition, we have a different type of assessment, different type of business objectives, different type of potential risks, and everything kind of changes depending on what your transition is. We create a bunch of transitions in sequence for you, and kind of we get that future state where you would like to be strategically in a couple of years using cloud computing technologies. So that's the future state. Where's the current state? So in a current state, we first started to look into how do you treat your infrastructure, how do you treat your databases, and all of the typical IT technology questions. But we very quickly started to expand them out to other dimensions, but also we looked across the complete life cycle. So in the life cycle space, you can see that we are analyzing everything across from strategy down to improvement, and we are looking at all of different boxes. We actually created some, it looks horrendously complicated. It's not. It's 54 dimensions. Once you go through and do the heat mapping, you actually very quickly find out the blue means that you are awesome, green means you're good, yellow it's okay, and then you go to a couple of those that are really behind, they're red. And that's where we focus your transition from your current state. And again, not to repeat myself, that is a maturity perspective. We are looking into all of those things that actually help you to assess where you are, where you want to go, what's the gap, how do we bridge the gap, what's the heat mapping, and what is the roadmap out there. Right, so we are doing any type of assessment, any type of analysis, any of that stuff goes into the maturity perspective. Now, I'm aware that enterprise architecture got a really bad reputation in the last couple of years because it spends way too much time in here. So we do this very lightweight, very quick, just strong enough that actually customer gets enough of the insight, what is going to be needed, and where we are and where we're going. This is not something that any customer would spend obsessive amount of time. The reason for that, we are happy to acquire technical debt. We will go forward and then do things right in the optimization cycle. Let me move over to people, and we have a people perspective that I'm trying to explain here. A typical question that we are getting are those things on the right side of the slide. How do you do the new job description? I want to hire 20 new cloud professionals. Can you tell me what is the name of the role and what's the skills do they need and all of that stuff? So we go back to that strategic Norton Kaplan strategy map you saw at the beginning. We grab your key organizational goals for your IT organization and we start to decompose them. What are the capabilities required to meet those goals? What are the activities required to meet those capabilities? And what type of skills do you need in your organization to do those activities? Then we give you the list of skills. The way how you slice and dice them is entirely up between you and your HR function and all of that stuff. I can just tell you what are the new set of skills, technical skills, soft skills, program management skills, and business skills that are required in a modern IT professional that will do the job in the future. So with that, we created the people perspective, and this one also has a whole bunch of components we bring together, package, and actually use for whenever we create a very custom and very specific roadmap for our customers. One of a very important one actually is the organizational change management, just as a side story. In a traditional enterprise cycle of people, process, and technology, technology is the very easy one, really easy one to change. Processes, we go through it quite fast. People are always on that kind of a slowest path to change, and that's why we started to crank up and offer a lot of the organizational change management support to our large enterprises. Now, when we come to the process, we realize that organizations are now suddenly requiring two speeds of IT. You need to have that slow around the sun type of a speed, which is always traditional waterfall gatekeeping approach. And we looked into the typical phases, and we define them like a plan, build, run. So green, blue, red. Plan would be in strategy and analysis, design and transition, going all the way to operations and improvement. But within that, we defined a very rapid cycles as well. So you can do systems of record that are extremely slow and risk-averse, and you can go through a slow lane, or you can use any of those fast lanes and actually spin them through it in many, many, many different iterations and cycles. At the end, the answer is that IT needs to work at both speeds. You need to be both agile and extremely risk-averse and control, depending on what type of a system do you want to either do, build, or migrate to the cloud. Again, that was just one of the models. We built the whole process perspective that is focusing on how do you do those things, what's the rhythm, what's the controlling checkpoints, how do you do the quality management, all of the things that matter to a typical project and program manager. Now, going towards the last two perspectives that we have, one of them is the security perspective. When it comes to security, we realize that we need to actually pull it out. If you're looking traditionally through the Zachman framework dimensions, there are 6 dimensions asking who, when, why, what, where, and I missed the 6th one. Security is kind of implicit in all of them, but we decided because security is always such on a front line of a discussion when anyone has a cloud journey in their mind, we actually are bringing a whole bunch of a security components and models up to the front. Security reference architecture would be just one of them that we actually use and deploy heavily. In a security perspective, we have a whole bunch of other things, from how to set the security strategy that in a longer term you always know that your risk exposure is at least as good, if not better, than what you did on premises or in your previous traditional part. All of the governance and risk and compliance approaches are fit directly in here. I know I'm getting boring already, but here is the last perspective that I want to talk about, and I'm not even giving you a model, so I'm kind of I'm cutting a whole bunch of stuff out from my otherwise 2.5 hours engineering deck. Operating perspective is the one that really matters. In some organizations, actually, is usually the first, when operating people are really freaking out because there is a feeling that all of the things that they used to do in the traditional environment will be very, very different in the cloud environment. So we created an operating perspective that actually helps create everything that is required to have a modern hybrid operations across all of those different environments that are running out there. Now, let me bring all of that together, right? The big picture, which we call the cloud adoption framework, and is actually surprisingly well aligned and sits on top of most of the modern enterprise architecture frameworks that are currently used and composed. It has 7 major perspectives. It kind of addresses 7 concerns, and you can very easily map every perspective to a specific constituents. People perspective would go with the people managers and HR, platform perspective with the technical engineering and solution architects, maturity perspective with enterprise architects, and so on and so on and so on. White paper, as you can see, link at the bottom, is describing each of those perspectives much more in detail than I can actually afford here in a good half an hour that I got allocated for that. But I'm not done, because the real magic actually starts after this, my horrendously boring 20 minutes explanation of how enterprise architecture works in the cloud. Let me show you the actual magic, right? You get all of those components in a box that we are proposing and building together with our partner ecosystem that is eagerly contributing into it. And there's way more in there than you saw just sample 6 per perspective. Actually, we don't have any limit or boundary how many different components will be in any of the perspectives. And then you take only those out that actually matter for you in your case based on your journey that you want to create and plan. And then you start sequencing them in your own roadmap. You literally, out from that possibility of many, many Lego bricks, you create exactly that little Lego building that is up to your liking. Let me show you a couple of examples. The first one is a very common scenario of application portfolio migration, which most of large enterprises are going after. And it might look very big and complex, but from framework perspective, from EA perspective, is actually very, very simple. You only need 3 big components from our Lego box. First one, which is coming from maturity perspective, you need to do application portfolio assessment. The second one, which is coming out from a platform perspective, you actually need to kick off and spin the application migration factory. And the last one, coming out from operations perspective, you actually need to assure operational integration. All of those are big, but looking from complexity perspective, they are not complex. It's not a lot of stuff to handle. It is a lot of stuff from perspective of volume of work. It is not from perspective of governance of work. And a shameless plug, if you are here tomorrow morning, there is a session that Paul and we are running specifically on application portfolio migrations, which is kind of using things that I'm talking here in this presentation. Let me show you something that is kind of the meat size of a complexity, and we are very commonly actually explaining to our customers how we do our work. This would be a typical, relatively simple roadmap for customer that goes from nothing, and they would like to go to substantial usage of the cloud in as fast time as possible. So we start with a business case. Actually, sometimes we start with a workshop, and then we backload it with a business case. Then we go through a couple of technical activities, operational activities, and then at the end, you see that we actually readdress the completely new enterprise architecture policies, and we do another business-focused activity of defining and verifying the cost and billing is right, correct, and sound. Well, usually we add additional stuff on top of that. It would be, for example, coming from a people domain that we want to redefine organizational structures. We want to add skills and competencies, a little bit around processes. And at the bottom, you can also see quite a lot of activity on the security. And you can see where that whole thing is going. So if I show you my last slide before I call Blake back up on a stage, if very large adoption roadmap, you can't just draw it the same way I did it before. That's why actually we decomposed it downside the life cycle. And the life cycle, which we see is used kind of, you saw it already before, goes through a strategy all the way down to the improvement, which we are kind of insisting with our customers. The improvement part of the life cycle allows you to incur technical debt, because we will fix it in the improvement phase, because velocity and quick value realization is usually much more on a front line than doing that first yield right approach, depending on a customer. So you create a sub-roadmap per stage of your life cycle. And as you can see, every stage we found out that kind of gets the mixture of a little bit of everything. Maybe design includes usually development and testing. That includes a little bit more of a technology-focused work, which you see in a purple color. Transition is usually a little bit more process-focused and process-heavy. But in general, we build those roadmaps out from the components we have. And our utmost desire is actually to create those otherwise looking very daunting, big, oh, we are going down the cloud route. What does that really mean? Well, it's easy once you start slicing that whole elephant into little bits and pieces, because you don't have to do everything at the same time. And allows you to see that whole complete roadmap from a high-level perspective, allows you to actually drive a very meaningful governance and allows you to actually control the whole thing. Are we going at the right speed, to a right direction, and at the right time? But enough of touting my own trumpet here, because let's rather hear from our customers that went down the route of the similar journey. So I'll invite Blake together with his guests to come up, and I would really like that you hear it from our customers, their voice, how they did that. Blake.
Great. Thank you very much, Miha. Gentlemen. Hello. I'm Blake Chisholm, and I'm an IT transformation consultant with our public sector group in AWS Professional Services. Now, I think if you were to ask any of our professional services practitioners, what is the one thing that you really love about working in AWS ProServe? Probably all of them would say working with very innovative enterprises, the forward thinkers of the industry, the IT execs, and finding out how they plan on moving these huge enterprises that are essential to our society into the cloud, into a new operating model. That's something that is daunting. If you think about what they're doing, it's so exciting to be able to take the technology that AWS has and be able to rework those processes, rework the people, and make something new and make something exciting. The framework that Miha just walked through is really interesting, because what we've done is said, here are the modular pieces to this cloud adoption framework that enterprises can then take those components and craft their framework and move it forward. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, for one thing, as we begin looking into who these enterprises are and the complexity of it and the number of end users that are involved in it, we start seeing some very significant trends. Number one, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of end users are impacted by these enterprises. So it's not just a matter of somebody not being able to access an app. This is people getting to work every day. This is financial institutions. So it's really important to plan out that process and to do it thoroughly. Now, you may have heard in keynotes and in some of the session speakers that this is hard work. I think they've said it's hard, hard, hard. And the people who are willing to do that work are exciting to us. And we love to be able to work with these customers and say, this framework is difficult. Taking what you have as an organization and moving it into a new cloud operating model is difficult, but it's also exciting work. It's something that is new and entertaining at the same time. We have fun when we're doing it. And so what we want to do today is take the more strategic cloud adoption framework that Miha just went over and take that down into a tactical level and be able to let you see what are the questions that enterprises are asking. What are the differences in the different groups? Even within the same industry, these frameworks are going to be completely different. The decisions that have to be made, the end results that have to be made are completely different. Today, I'm really excited to have a couple of our customers up here that represent some organizations within industries that are completely different from each other, but that are really at the bedrock of our society. We have the transportation industry. And so you think about all of the stakeholders in the transportation industry when it comes to trains moving people and products all around. We have higher education. This organization is a large Tier 1 research institution that does a lot of meaningful work. They are very astute. They have academic prowess. They have athletic prowess. We are now going to add cloud prowess to that. Okay, these are organizations that are moving that forward. They're excited. You know, if you don't believe me, I bet you ND Cloud Prowess is probably trending by now, and I'm sure we'll be on Twitter soon. Let me take just a second to introduce the organizations and the people that we'll be speaking with today. Bill Duncan is Director of ESM Technology Services for Amtrak, and his organization is well known, very big, impacts a lot of people, and they asked professional services to come in and begin working with them on this process. So Bill, if you would, tell us about yourself, tell us a little bit about the organization and some of the steps that you've gone through, the questions that you've asked to begin this progress.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Blake. So can everybody hear me out here on this? Okay, great. Just a real quick, brief overview about Amtrak. Hopefully everyone understands and knows Amtrak, but just to sort of get it in perspective. Amtrak actually is our public intercity service for rail across the U.S. Today we service over 48 states. Over 300 trains are in operation every day, traveling over about 21,000 miles of rail. It's a pretty big infrastructure that we have to support. In supporting that mission in the IT world, we have to cover various business applications that support the revenue, train operations, the finance section, the back office, and human capital. So we have a pretty important position in supporting our business mission within the Amtrak space. Back in 2011, we actually started working with Amazon. And when we started working with Amazon, it was more of let's sort of kick the tires. Let's see what this looks like. How can it impact our operations and impact our business? To be honest with you, that went very well, as expected. But one thing that came out of that was three things that has to be done to be successful. And that was tying three components, and that's the business, the process, and the people and the technology, right? So business, people, and technology is sort of the three components that have to come together. I'm sure you guys can sit here and realize that the technology was the easiest part. It's really the business and the processes and the people that have to come together in a way so that we can help support our initiatives. So over the last, I'd say we engaged with you, what, 4 to 6 months ago?
That's about right, yeah.
We sat back and we said, hey, look, we need to do a governance model. We really need to see how we're going to deploy and manage this as we ingest this into our infrastructure piece. So to help do that, we came up with in our governance model several key documents that came out of that. Some of it was our conceptual operations model. We had to understand that. We had to understand the staffing model of it. We had to understand the RFS process, the request for services within our organization. And today, we started off at a very, I would say, a very immature model, and where we started in 2011, and we've gone to we're about halfway through our maturity model now, where we're actually becoming more proactive in our organization and being able to deliver the services and with the credibility that we need to. And again, you have to understand it's melding these services that come in so rapidly into our overall process and how we support that within an organization without turning the organization upside down. I mean, because we have a lot of legacy that we have to work with. So.
Very good, thank you. Now, one of the things that you guys did as part of that, and Miha showed it in kind of the middle section, was the application assessment. What does that look like, and what was the outcome of the assessment that you're working on?
So one of the things that we did, we sat back and we looked across our business portfolio. And we have a very extensive business portfolio and applications in our organization. So when we turned around and said, we sort of grouped them some categories, right? What are some of the things that are not going to move? I mean mainframe, right? I mean, that's going to be a tough one to move. Then there's the applications that said, hey, you know what? We want to move them, but we're going to have to re-architect them to move them for whatever reason. We just need to rethink how we do it. And then we've got the ones that we're just going to, lift and ship out to doing that. So we broke our application portfolio across that. Then we start racking and stacking based on risk mitigation and security and how it's going to impact our infrastructure and delivering to the business with business continuity. So.
And was it easy work?
It's challenging.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So.
Thank you very much, Phil. I appreciate it. So our next guest is Sharif Najim. Sharif is the Enterprise Application Architect at Notre Dame, and we have been engaged with them as an organization for a while, and it's very exciting to see what they're doing. So Sharif, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization and some of the things that you guys are doing right now.
Absolutely. So hi, everybody. I'm Sharif Najim, and I'm, like Blake said, the Enterprise Application Architect at Notre Dame. I'm also very humbled and honored to serve as an adjunct instructor in our Mendoza College of Business, which is the #1 undergraduate business school in the country. So, yeah, go Irish, go Cloud, go Mendoza. So a little bit about the organization for folks who don't know. We're one of the preeminent Catholic research institutions in the United States. We have an undergraduate population of about 8,000 people. All told, with graduate students, we're about 12,000. And that enrollment is not something that we're looking to grow, despite what any models might say. So in the context of projects that we're working on, first of all, something that gives us joy and kind of meaning every day when we come to work is underwritten by the university's overall mission statement, which is very long and broad if you go and read it online, but can be summarized very succinctly as being a force for good in the world. That's a very powerful statement. And so in my role as an architect, I work in the Office of Information Technologies. It's our central IT organization, and our mission is to be and serve as Notre Dame's trusted technology partner. So that's a mission that we take very seriously, and it's a mission that we're very, very excited about. So we started working with Amazon in the fall of 2012, so a couple years ago, almost to date. And how we got interested in Amazon was considering our main website, nd.edu, and its capability to handle variable load in the event that the national spotlight swung our way. So that was kind of our first foray into Amazon. That was our first partnership with Amazon. We worked with our solution architects and actually went live. We were so confident in our technology and in the support that we went live with our main website 2 days before we played in the BCS National Championship game. So on that day, we saw a huge spike in web traffic on nd.edu from about 38,000 visitors to over 150,000. Auto-scaling worked brilliantly. Our website came up and down as load grew and shrank. It was exactly what we'd hoped for. But as Miha pointed out, we're willing to incur technical debt. So 2 years later, nd.edu is already an Amazon Classic, right? No VPC. So that's already something. It's been working brilliantly. It's probably been our most robust, reliable, resilient service for the past 2 years. And it's already outdated, right? So we already know now we need to reinvest to modernize what we already have out there. So what we're really actively working on now, what we're really excited about, and I can tell everybody's excited. It's the last session of the day. Everybody's really excited because I'm phenomenally excited about what we're doing right now. We have a ND Cloud First strategy, so please join our conversation on Twitter. And what we're committed to is migrating 80% of our IT services into the cloud over the next 3 years. And so what does that really mean for us? What it means for us is, obviously, we've done a lot of people work, right? We've done a lot of ground laying over the past 2 years of hearts and minds of people. If you talk to any organization who's gone down this journey, not everybody's really excited about it at the onset, right? You're moving a lot of people's fundamental day jobs. And that's a journey, that's a transformation, that's an education process, and it just takes some time, right? So our first preference is at the SaaS layer. We're a proud Google campus. You know, our main line of business applications for our academic purposes are all hosted off campus. So one of the things we did over the summer is put a copy of our authentication resource in Amazon. We use Route 53 to do failure detection and say, hey, if we ever have a network incident on campus where our students, faculty, and staff who might be traveling or off campus, we have a network incident that takes out our border, all of a sudden, in the past, they couldn't get to their services. They couldn't get to their learning management system. They couldn't get to their email. That was a very sad piece of time, right? By using Route 53, by putting a copy of our auth store off campus, all of a sudden, we didn't reduce the reliability of our cloud providers to our campus internet connection, right? That was really important for us. You know, then moving down to platform, and then third on the list, right, is the infrastructure layer. Now, I think the infrastructure layer is really interesting and really compelling because of a fantastic story, right? One of the things we did over the summer is we have a home-built content management system, hosts about 400 websites. We put them in Amazon. We were talking about that at an IT town hall, and someone from the math department talked to me afterwards and said, can we talk a little bit about what that means? I don't really understand what that means because everything looks the same. And I said, well, yeah, absolutely, that's brilliant. It does look the same. What it means for you is that if we have a network incident and our border goes down, your prospective students, your prospective faculty, they can also get to your website. You can go to Starbucks or get on your phone and still manage your content. Wow, you know, the lights go on and they're like, wow, thank you so much. So it's really at the infrastructure layer where we can have a determined positive impact on people's lives and not affect their business processes at all. That's a huge capability. And you know, we're so thankful for the partnership that we have with AWS. The folks have been absolutely phenomenal to work with. It's been a great journey so far.
Thank you very much. And in full disclosure, we were monitoring their website during the championship game. Noticed a whole bunch of hits coming from Tuscaloosa, saying Roll Tide, trying to bring it down, but it stayed up, and you guys did a great job. So thank you guys very much. It's been a joy to work with you, and we look forward to continuing this. So the takeaways from the tactical session now are just understand how important it is in the enterprise to be able to create this framework and to make those hard decisions to drive the enterprise forward. It's something that is going to be hard work. There's going to be a lot of toil in it. We as a professional services organization, the customers that we work with all work closely to provide these tools. It's not something that you'll have to do on your own. We're here to support you on that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Miha.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Sharif, and thank you, Blake. Before I let you go out from the room, let me just give you a reiteration of a couple of key points that I hope that you will remember. First one is that when you are going to extremely complex environments that usually traditionally, because of its own complexity, would not go into the full cloud adoption journey, we did create the enterprise architecture answer that actually allows you to decompose and sequence the journey on its own. We do have a whole set of those modular components that includes modeling, that includes many different things, very much everything that is required across the life cycle that a typical large enterprise needs for the complete IT adoption on its journey. And there is a white paper. You already saw link before. Please download it, grab it, read it, comment on it. This is the first one in series. Very much the first white paper describes the complete problem space of how to actually approach this descriptive decomposition that we are going after. Now we need to follow it with 7 more, much more detailed white papers that will explain how exactly do you do people perspective and process perspective and all of that. We'll not have much of a time for questions and answers, and we need to close the streaming session on 2nd today as well. But for the end, let me put it this way. If you liked this session, My name is Micha and Blake, and the session was Enterprise 305. Please vote for it in our evaluation system and like it. If you didn't like the session, well, I need to be frank and earnest with you, right? I'll be frank, he's Ernst, and this is the gaming session 402. Thank you so much.